You're listening to the Okanagan Reader, where we present readings of short stories and other works that have been released under a Creative Commons license by their creators. In keeping with the license, these recordings are released under a matching license. You are free to listen to and share these readings as set out in their version of the Creative Commons license. Today's reading is part 1 of Shoe and Marriage, a short story in the collection Stranger Things Happen by Kelly Link. And now, Shoe and Marriage, Part 1. 1. The Glass Slipper. He never found the girl, but he still goes out looking for her. His wife, the woman he married, she has the most beautiful smile, but her feet are too big. This girl looks at him, but she doesn't smile. She's wearing too much makeup, blue eyeliner put on like house paint, lipstick, mascara, sexy glitter dusted all over her face and bare shoulders. If he touched her, it would come off on his fingers, fine and gritty and sad. He doesn't touch her. The other women in the house, they've probably told her things. Maybe she recognizes him. These women are paid to be discreet, but once, afterwards, a woman asked him for his autograph. He tried to think of something appropriate to write. She didn't have a piece of paper, so instead he wrote on the back of a take-out menu. He wrote, "I am a happy man. I love my wife very much." He underlined, happy. They stand awkwardly in this girl's tiny room. This room is too small and the bed is too big. They stand as far from the bed as possible, crowded up against the wall. On the wall are posters of celebrities, pictures that this girl has cut out from newspapers and fashion magazines. The people in these pictures are glossy, like horses. They look expensive. He sees his wife with her beautiful smile looking down at them from the wall. If he were to look carefully, he would probably find himself on the wall as well, looking comfortable and already too much at home here. He doesn't look at the wall. He looks at this girl's feet. He was never a very good dancer. What he loved were the women in their long, wide skirts. When they danced, the heavy taffeta and silk hitched up and belled out, and then you saw their petticoats. More silk, more taffeta, as if underneath that's all they were, silk and taffeta. Their shoes left thin, gritty smears on the marble floor. He never saw what kind of shoes they were wearing, only hers. Perhaps they were all wearing slippers made of glass. Perhaps glass slippers were fashionable at the time. Her feet must have been so small. And she was a tall girl, too. She leaned against his arms, and he hovered over her for a minute. He could smell her hair. It was stacked up on top of her head, all pinned up in some sort of wavy knot just there beneath his nose. It tickled his nose. It smelled warm. He was so happy. He must have had the silliest smile on his face. Her dress went all the way down to the floor. There were diamonds on the hem, which was silk. The dress made a silky, slithery, scratchy noise against the floor, like tiny tails and claws. It sounded like mice. So these are the two things he still wonders about. What's under those skirts? Those other people dancing, were they as happy as he was? In the garden, the clock struck 12, and she went. When she went, where did she go? He never found that girl. He finds other girls. These girls, this girl, they don't wear, she isn't wearing enough clothes. Tangerine-colored see-through shirt, short skirt ripped all the way up the thigh. Flesh, fat breasts squashed together in a black brassiere, goose-pimpled arms, long, stocky legs balanced on those two tiny feet. He finds the body extremely distracting. First of all, he says to her, "Let's have a look in your closet." In these closets there is always the right sort of dress. This dress is not the sort of dress one expects to find in a closet in this sort of house. It is prom dressy, flouncy, lacy, long, and demure. It's pink. This girl, he thinks, ran away from home on her tiny feet with a backpack on her back with these things in it: posters of her favorite rock stars, her prom dress, and the stuffed tiger with real glass eyes that he sees now on top of the red velveteen bedspread. "What's your name?" The girl folds her arms across her breasts defensively. She has realized that they are not the point after all. Her arms are freckled, and also, he sees, bruised, as if someone has been holding her but not carefully enough. "Emily," she says. "Emily Apple." "Emily," he says, "why don't you put on this dress?" When he was a little boy, it was always one of two things. He was petted and pampered and made much of, or he was ignored and left to his own devices. When he was alone, what he liked best was to sit under things. He liked to hide in plain sight, to be in the middle of all the people. He sat under the piano in the music room. At banquets he slid down his enormous chair and sat under the table with his father's dogs. They licked at his face and arms with long, thoughtful tongues. He hid in the fireplaces in the great hall, behind the wrought iron screens. In the summer there were sparrows up in the chimneys, also lizards, spider-webs, broken sooty bits of shell, feathers, and bones caught in the grates. The ladies-in-waiting stood dozing in the thin, dusty sunlight of his mother's rooms, and he crept under their heavy skirts and sat on their spangled feet, quiet as a mouse. He helps Emily Apple slide the beautiful pink dress over her head. He buttons the row of buttons up her narrow back. He lifts her hair up, heaps it up, and sticks pins all through the sticky, teased mass. She sits perfectly still on the bed, the glass eyes of the tiger looking out at her from the folds of her skirt. He brings water in a basin and washes her face. He powders her face. He finds a locket in a heap of bangles and safety pins. Inside is a photograph of a young girl, maybe Emily Apple or maybe not. The little girl stares at him. "What kind of girl do you think I am?" He fastens the locket around Emily Apple's long neck. Her face is very naked, very beautiful. Her freckles stand out like spatters of soot on a white sheet. She looks as if she is going to a funeral or a wedding. They find a pair of gloves and pull them up over her freckled arms. Her fingers stick out where mice have eaten the tips of the gloves, but the dress comes all the way down to the floor. They both feel more comfortable now. Sometimes it surprises him, all these runaway girls, all these women, with their sad faces and their tiny feet. How long has this house been here? When he was looking for that girl, he went to a lot of houses. He knocked on the front doors. He announced who he was. These were eligible girls from good homes. They had maids. He asked the maids if they would try on the shoes too. At night he dreamed about women's feet. But this house, he never came here. He has been married for 9 years. Perhaps this is the sort of house that only married men can find. That girl, where did she go? He's still looking for her. He doesn't expect to find her, but he finds other girls. He loves his wife, but her feet are too big. It wasn't what he expected, his life. It isn't at all what he expected. His wife isn't the one that he was looking for. She was a surprise. He burst out laughing, the glass slipper hanging off her toes. She laughed, and soot fell out of her hair. He loves her, and she loves him. But that girl, he only danced with her one time before the clock struck midnight, and then she left her shoe behind. He was supposed to find it. He was supposed to find her. He never found her. But these girls, this girl, Emily Apple, the other girls in their tiny rooms, the woman downstairs, knew exactly the sort of girl he was looking for. In one of these closets, he thinks, maybe there is, perhaps there is, a glass slipper, the match for the one in his pocket. Some nights when he comes home, he's carrying the orphan shoe in his coat pocket. It fits just fine. That's how small, how impossibly small it is. His wife smiles at him. She never asks where he's been. She sits in the kitchen beside the fire, with her feet tucked up under her, and he lays his head down in her lap. If only her feet weren't so big. When he was first looking for that girl, he got to lift up a lot of skirts. Only just so high. Really not high enough. He knelt down, and he tried the shoe on every single foot. But it never fit right, and he always went away again with the shoe in his pocket. His wife wasn't one of the eligible girls. She was a kitchen maid. When he saw her, she had her head stuck up the kitchen chimney. She was beating the broom up the chimney, shaking out the soot. Head to foot, she was covered in soot, black as a beetle. When she sneezed, the soot rose up in a cloud. She tried to curtsy when she saw him, and soot fell off her like a black cloak. Everyone had crowded into the kitchen behind him, his footman, the lady of the house, her daughters, the other maids. One of the footmen read the proclamation, and the sooty girl sneezed again. The eligible young ladies looked sulky, and the maids looked haughty, as if they knew what was going to happen. They didn't like it one bit, but they weren't one bit surprised. The kitchen girl dusted off a kitchen stool, and she sat her sooty self down on it, sooty arms akimbo. The long prehensile toes of her bare black feet gripped the stone floor as he knelt down beside her. Her foot was warm and gritty in his hand, and her long toes wriggled as if he was tickling her. He hung the glass slipper off her toes. Soot came off his fingers. There was soot in the long folds of her skirt. He stayed there for a minute, kneeling in the warm ashes at her feet. "What size shoe do you wear?" he said. Her feet were so big. "What kind of girl do you think I am?" she said. She sounded as if she were scolding him. When he looked up, her face was so beautiful. This girl sits perfectly still on the bed. There is just room enough for him to kneel down beside the bed. He lifts up her skirt just high enough. He cups her tiny foot in his hand. How could anyone's foot be so small? It fits into the palm of his hand like a kitten or an egg. He wishes he were that small, like a shoe. He wishes he were a small, perfect shoe, that he could be matched to her foot and hidden under her skirt forever. He takes out the slipper and he slides it onto her foot. They both look down at her foot, beautiful in the glass slipper, and the girl sighs. "It fits just fine," she says. When he doesn't say anything, she says, "What do we do now?" "What kind of girl do you think I am, that sooty girl?" his wife said. He says to the girl on the bed, "Take the shoe off, so we can put it on again."